So, our guest today is Sarah Woodard. And what she wants you to know about her is that her mission is to create a world in which all beings are respected and honored. She's an author, a Reiki master teacher, certified shamanic practitioner, vegan cat mom, and chemical free beekeeper. That's pretty cool. So when I asked her to let me know what it was that we were going to be working on, she said that it was something to do with feeling safe when not being in control of things or things don't go as planned, and possibly even diving into money and success issues. So, hello, Sarah. Thank you for
Hi,
coming on.
April. Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit, before we dive in, tell me a little bit about the chemical-free beekeeping. That sounds really cool.
It's wicked cool. So I actually fell in love with bees at like the age of 4 or 5 probably. And when I was at the Boston Museum of Science with my mom, and they have this indoor like plexiglass beehive so you can like see inside of it, right? And they had this sign like, can you find the queen? And, because the queen is bigger and looks very different to the trained eye. And I was just fascinated. I don't know if I found the queen or not. I went back to the Boston Museum of Science 4 or 5 years ago as an adult. The display is much less impressive. It's much smaller than I remember because when you're a kid, everything is grand and huge and whatever. It was much littler and like off in a corner. Like I almost didn't even see it. It was a very different experience. But that's when I fell in love with them. And I want to say it was. Let me see, I've been in my house for 7 years. So it was probably 8 years ago or so. They were offering a class over in Hollis, New Hampshire, so not far from where I live, in what they call top bar hive beekeeping. And I didn't know what that was. All I saw was it was beekeeping, and it happened to be on my birthday weekend. And I went, well, I'm in. That's my gift to myself this year, and I'm in. And what I learned in that class, among other things, is that the traditional beekeeping that most people are familiar with the up and down hives that look like they have drawers or whatever, and the tops come off and they have the rectangular frames, they use a lot of chemicals to manage and treat hive-related issues.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. And all of those chemicals wind up in all of the hive products, whether it's honey or beeswax or pollen or, royal jelly or whatever. It all winds, and I'm not a big fan of the chemicals. I really don't like any of that.
Yeah, that kind of defeats the purpose of the honey in the first place. And
right, and it's not super healthy for the bees, right? It's not super great for the bees.
Yeah.
So the top bar hives are horizontal as opposed to vertical. Did I do that right? I always get those confused. Mm-hmm. And
horizontal is sideways, vertical is up and down.
So, yeah, so they are horizontal instead of vertical. Thank you. And they don't have frames. They literally just have bars, and the bees are able to build their comb the way they normally do in nature, which is this beautiful catenary curve shape. And her whole goal with these is to make hives that are more friendly to bees. And so part of that was not using chemicals.
Nice.
So for example, a big problem with bees that are in a managed hive as opposed to in nature is something called mites, varroa mites, for example. And they're not good. They chew into the exoskeleton of the bee when it's still in larval stage, and then to stay attached to it. It's not a great thing, but you can actually treat them by just sprinkling powdered sugar over the hive, because it makes the bees feel dirty, and so they bathe really intensely. And in doing so, all of the mites fall off, and then the hive itself has a screened bottom that you can then close up in the winter, but it has a screened bottom. And all of that, the sugar and the mites and whatever dirt was on the bees will fall out the bottom. So that's just one example. But traditionally, traditionally they're adding chemicals to treat these mites. And I'm like, well, why are you doing that when there's this other option? Yeah. So that's sort of my jam, is not doing stuff like that.
Wow, that's great. I like that. Yeah. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about like what's going on with you lately? What's been coming up? Like, it seems like there's some abundance blocks and wanting to try to control circumstances. So, just kind of let me know what that is.
I'll just give you the verbal diarrhea.
Good.
So, I mean, I had known that sort of I feel like we all sort of come into this world with like a big thing that we're supposed to clear that's both for us but also ancestral. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's always been about safety. And so I've been pretty intensely working on that. But I am just recently sort of discovering how much of it is tied into my finances. And this is a recurring pattern for me, which I started to try to tell you and then stopped myself so I could share it fresh on your show. So my sort of pattern with finances has been, you know, I find something that I enjoy doing and I make decent money at it, and then it just all comes crashing the fuck down all over my face. Am I allowed to swear on your show?
Yes.
All right, good. It just comes crashing down. And it's devastating every single time. And every single time it makes me worry about how am I going to pay for my bills and this and that. And then as I start to worry about that, then I go to this completely false place of I'm not worthy and nobody wants to hire me and I'm unloved, all of which is bullshit. And logically I know, but it comes up because I'm afraid about money. And so most recently what happened was I have had this really great gig for the past couple of years on a freelance basis, responding to hotel reviews as if I'm the hotel. I'm not the hotel. I'm a contract for a third party, but I was making like more money than I've ever made in my life. I've been able to upgrade my style of living, all of these amazing things, right? I was pumped. And all of a sudden the work it just dried up, like out of the blue. There's literally nothing. And I have no explanation for it. I mean, it always slows down a little in the fall and the winter because people aren't traveling as much. But this is literally like a desert. There's nothing. There's nothing. And I'm in full on, holy shit, panic mode. I don't know how I'm going to pay for things. What can I cancel? Do I even want to go to that drastic step yet? And oh my God, and furthermore, because I've been doing this freelance gig for so long, I don't even have a decent resume. And I would love some help with that because it's not my forte. I'm very good at many types of writing, but not resumes. That's a whole horse of another color, and it's not my forte.
My wife could probably be pretty good at helping you with that part.
But I would so love some help, April. I really would. If you want to hook me up after, I would be super grateful for any help with that. I've made a start, but I've had a very checkered work history for a lot of different reasons. And I don't know how to capture that in a way that doesn't make me appear on paper to be unhireable.
Sure. Yep.
But I also have a
I will
mad ton of skills. So
I'll bring that up to her and see if she's open to helping.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. Cause I've reached out to a couple of people. But I'm also like, but how am I going to pay them for their time? And I'm all just caught up in it. And
right. Yeah.
It's just this constant cycle. And I wind up in tears because I don't know how to solve it other than to keep looking for jobs and working on the resume and applying for work. But in the meantime, I literally have no money coming in. It's like being unemployed except without a severance package.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I'm freaking out. Yeah.
So the top thing that comes to mind for me is this is programming that most of us have. You know, in our culture, most of our ancestors have had either the Great Depression or a potato famine or, some point in our ancestral history, the Holocaust, where we were doing fine. And I'm getting chills while I'm talking about it. So it's being confirmed. Yes, this is part of this.
I'm getting chills too. So I'm getting the confirmation as well.
Yeah.
Particularly when I said the Holocaust, and I know that was actually a previous life for me. You actually helped me figure that out, that was a previous life for me. So that's where the safety about everything comes from, really.
Yeah. So there, for most of our ancestors, there was a time where they were doing fine, and then the rug was suddenly pulled out from under them financially or lifestyle-wise. So it's been proven that a lot of us carry through our DNA the triggers of our ancestors. So if your great-grandfather went to war, yes, epigenetics has shown that we could also have a trigger related to whatever traumatized them in that war. So the same thing stands for financial traumas and things of that nature. So we absolutely can carry those triggers and fears and woundings of our ancestors. And it was meant to be a protective mechanism. It's supposed to help keep us safe so that we're on guard for the possibility of that thing happening. The problem is that fear lingers even when we're not actually under threat, or when the threat is smaller than our ancestors experienced. And it brings up a lot of fear and defensiveness and reactivity instead of a logical response of how can I deal with this?
Right. Yes. And I'm one that tries to stay logical even in the midst of all of this emotional crap. But it would be nice to not have the emotional crap brought into the situation at all, because I know that what I put out there is what I'm going to get back. And if I'm applying for jobs, but I'm also sounding desperate, not great.
Right, right, absolutely. And people can feel that. They can feel the
Right.
desperation.
Exactly.
Just like,
Exactly.
in my own history with work, there were periods of time where it was very slow. And, I can go through with you various things that I worked on to help deal with those fears, triggers, blocks, whatever. But it really is so awful and so scary. And you're doing consultations with people, or you're meeting with a client for the first time, or you're going to networking events and you're trying to put yourself out there, and it's like people can feel that desperation.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the moment you kind of clear that for yourself and you are able to lose that desperation, then everything opens up and people start flocking to you, and
Yes.
you can't get people to
Exactly.
say no for the
Exactly.
life of you. So
Right. And I need the jobs to be flocking to me. Um, because I really, from the logical perspective, like I have bills to pay and I don't have a second income to fall back on. It's me, myself, and I. Unless the cats suddenly are able to take on paid work,
that'd be
like,
lovely.
wouldn't that be great? Yeah,
Mhm.
to start paying their own way a little, that would be super. Um, it's me, myself, and I. So just from the logical standpoint, like, and that's why I feel desperate, but I can't go into a job interview like, oh my God, I need to be hired right now. That's not.
You don't think that'll get you hired?
I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it.
Okay, so let me tell you what I would recommend for this. And we
Okay.
can possibly even go through a round of it together, if you feel like that would be beneficial.
Okay.
So what I would do to help deal with that is feel the desperation that you're feeling. Just that sense of, uh-oh, there isn't enough. There's not enough money coming in. There's not enough work coming in. And what if it never comes? Kind of going into that possibility in the future of this continuing forever, or if it even gets worse. And you can even go down the rabbit hole of, would I lose my home? Would I have to give
Oh,
up?
I've gone down that rabbit hole. I've gone
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So to be clear, what I'm talking about is doing this with the click track, with the PS Tech click track.
Gotcha. Okay.
So having those exact fearful thoughts that you have already been having, but plug them into the click tracks. But the real trick is to also include past experiences where you have had stuff like that happen to you, past experiences where it has been a negative, that you haven't had enough work or money or whatever. Even going back to childhood, thinking of times where there was financial lack in your family, where maybe you weren't able
Oh,
to do some of
that
the
was all
activities.
I ever heard growing up. That was
Okay.
all I ever heard growing up. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't
Okay.
afford it.
Those will be perfect examples to also throw into the thought process. It's just like, I was never able to do the things I wanted to. My parents were always telling me, we can't afford this. There's not enough, blah, blah, blah. And then going into, and I had a past life with the Holocaust, and that like ripped everything out from under me. And my ancestors have been through depressions and Holocaust and things like that. And so that has ripped the foundation out from under them. And so that has intensified my fear of that now. So you're just kind of going around to all of those different points in time and acknowledging all of it together. But what you do is you use the current emotional fear or the future emotional fear as the seed, and then you apply that fear to everything, because you're not going to have conscious feelings attached to the past life thing,
Right.
the ancestral thing, and possibly not even about your childhood stuff. Because on a conscious level, you understand why your parents had to tell you they couldn't afford it, and why they were kind of locked in their own
Yeah.
programming.
Well, but just like on a conscious level as an adult, I know why my mother kept telling me, don't stand on the back of the carriage at the grocery store. you're going to tip it over. And I did in fact tip it over. And that left me with feelings of insecurity about going to the grocery store. And I had to work through all of that as a grown-up in order to feel safe going to the grocery store, instead of hating the grocery store and not really understanding why I had this passionate, intense, like, desire to never be in the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And you know, I mean, that kind of moment where, you know, you do tip it over, or maybe you got in trouble for it, or you got hurt by it, or whatever.
My baby sister, who still had the soft spot in her head, her head hit the floor.
No.
No,
My gosh.
she was fine. Although now, as an adult, when people say, "Were you dropped as a child?" she says yes, but she was actually fine. But what really left me with emotional scar was, back then they didn't have 911, so they just called the police to get us to see my sister's doctor as quickly as possible, because that's what we had back then. It was a small town. But what I recall was being put into the backseat of the police car with my mom and my sister, and thinking that I was in trouble because I disobeyed my mother and I was going to jail.
Wow.
So I had to work through all of that.
Yeah. And, you know, that's on top of just the empathic overload of going into the grocery store where nobody wants to be.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It was obviously a multi-layered thing, but it was really, and it took me until just last year to really understand that was what was at the heart of this intense feeling about, I cannot go to the grocery store unless it's 7 a.m. and there's no one else there, and I have to get in and out as fast as possible. I still am never going to.
What tool did you use? What tool did you use to get rid of that fear?
So that one was literally I just used a mantra, and every time I had to go to the grocery store, the whole way driving there and the whole way walking through the store, I would just say, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. And eventually my brain rewired itself, and you know, every once in a while I'll get triggered again and I'll be like, nope, I am safe. And it kind of, you know, clicks back to where it was. But I feel like the money thing, I feel like is much more deep-seated and multi-layered than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's where it comes in really handy to kind of think of all of those examples and even just briefly acknowledge them. So even things you don't have a conscious memory of, you can just kind of acknowledge, you know, the past life thing and whatever you know about that, and the ancestral thing and whatever you can logically assume about that.
Right.
And whatever memories pop up most strongly from childhood. You can, you know, even acknowledge too, just your own parents' upbringings if you know that they were brought up lacking financial means too. So
yeah, no, I don't think they were.
Okay. And that's fine. You just, wherever you feel like it came from. So that's what I would do, is just like use the click track and think about the current lack, the current fears, and then the what ifs of the future. Get good and worked up about that.
That won't take much. Okay.
Yep. Get that feeling good, strong, and present, and then just kind of go through the Rolodex of all of the different past experiences that seem related to that as well, and then go right back into worrying about the present and the future. So it's just kind of like cycling back and forth through the past stuff.
So basically the cycle that had me in tears before we hopped on, just go through that, but with the click track instead of by myself on the floor curled up in a ball.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's what I like to tell people is, if you're already having the negative thoughts and you're already freaking out about something, just go do that while you do the click track, and you'll get relief from it instead.
I'm very good at the freaking out piece right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's perfect. Would you like to do a round of that while we're on the call?
Yeah.
So we can
kind of
go through that. Okay. So I am going to pause the show and we'll do a little break during your click track round, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what you experienced with that. Okay. So we're back from round one. And when you do the PS Tech click tracks, you want to always rate at the beginning and end how intense those feelings are for you. So the measurement is like 10 is the end of the world and you might almost be suicidal about it. And 0 is, I have no feelings about that whatsoever. Yeah. So when we started, what number were you on?
Oh, I was at 10.
Okay.
I was yeah.
So we started.
It was literally the end of the world.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And if you think about it now, if you think about the lack of the work coming in, the lack of money, and that fear of not being able to pay the bills and stuff, what number would you say you're at now with it?
Like a 6 or a 7.
6 or 7. Good. Yeah. So it's come down a couple of notches. That's helpful.
Yeah,
And
it's better. Still not where I'd want to be to like go into a job interview and not come off as desperate, but it's better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the suggestion with the click tracks is to do as many rounds as necessary to get it down to a 1 or a 0. Those rounds don't need to be right in a row.
My life.
Yeah. Yeah. So they don't need to be right in a row. You don't need to do like 10 rounds in a row to get them gone. Right. But I would probably say doing another, round or 2 today, and then tomorrow hit it again. Because I know you have these tools
after.
Yeah. So you have these tools at home, so you can kind of continue doing this work. But I would like to do.
Double check, but yes.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to double check that before we get off. But yes, I think I do.
Yeah, and I can share the links with you too if you have lost the tracks, because I know you used to use them. So you.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I still have them. It's just a matter of finding them.
Right.
No, I do have it. PS Tech free audios and PS Tech level 1.
Great. Perfect. All right.
Got them.
So, I would like to do one more round.
Okay.
Today to even take it down another couple of notches. But what I want you to do this time, on top of everything else you were just focused on, is I want you to, in your head, kind of have a tantrum, almost like a potty mouth toddler. So you're all out upset.
I can do that, April. I can do that.
Yeah. And you are so effing tired of having to deal with this lack. You're so effing tired of having to worry about paying the bills. So that's where I want you to go with it this time, because I find
I can do that because I go there anyway.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So absolutely include that. I feel like the more intense you get, the faster you get. So
it works. Yeah.
Yes, it's important to feel the current fear. Yes, it's important to include the past roots, but it's also
but getting stuck there is not good.
Right. It's a good idea to get as intense as you possibly can with the feelings. I know as toddlers we're shamed and punished for that overreactivity. So we learn
that's a problem in a whole other podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really the best possible place from which to clear things, because that's our natural reactivity level. It's just that we have learned over time that wasn't acceptable and we've tamped it down, but it's still in there. So being able to let that come forward in a therapeutic setting where you are able to, process it. Yes. Process it in a safe way where you're not actually throwing yourself around the room, but you're allowing that level of emotion and reactivity to come through. And if you want to even like tap harder or whatever, like I will get really aggressive with my tapping if I'm super angry or upset about it, or I will make like faces and get really into it, or cry or act like I'm screaming, like I won't make a noise out loud, but I'll just, tense everything up and do a silent primal scream. So that kind of stuff can kind of help take the clearing to the next level. So
now I will, just to be upfront with you and your listeners, I will say that in any therapeutic setting, whether it's something like this or more traditional therapy or whatever, I am much more cerebral than I am on my own. And so I know that this will work better for me once you and I are off the call, because I will go to that emotional place better when I'm by myself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So why don't we just put a pin in this part of it then?
Okay.
So I would like you to do that after the call today or something like that. And I just want to check in with you in maybe a few days or a week or something like that, and kind of go over.
You can always reach out to me.
Yeah. So that way we can kind of check in, get an update, and see where you're at, and see what has shifted if you do a few rounds like that.
Okay.
So why don't we pivot a little bit then? Okay. And I kind of want to go over some of the things that I have worked on personally with my own success blocks and my own fears and things like that. So I've got a list going because it that was a really difficult time in my life too. And
Sure.
I spent a good probably 2 years working through these particular things and having like clearing one and having another crop up.
Yeah.
So,
Because healing is an onion. So yes.
yeah. So basically, once again, using past, present, and future elements of the thing whenever possible to get things at the root. Because what happens is if you only work on the current thing, if you only work on what's bothering you right now, then you'll get relief around that isolated thing from bothering you. But if you can also include things from your past that are similar, that helps you get permanent clearing from it so that in the future, similar things don't trigger you like they have been. So that's the reason that we try to go back to past roots whenever possible, because then we get more permanent clearing long term. So, okay. So, of course, I worked on whatever fears, worries, feelings came up in the moment as things went on. And a lot of it looked like what you just did yourself. um, Then I would do around on what if I don't have enough clients? What if I don't have enough money? And the history of lack in my family. I did a click track round on feelings of frustration or failure, feeling like I was failing at my business because I wasn't like busy and making a ton of money doing it for a period of time. I did a round on fear of success, like the fear that if I succeeded, maybe I wouldn't have enough money. I mean, not enough money. I wouldn't have enough free time. Like I might have to be spending all my time doing the work and wouldn't have any time to myself to do what I enjoyed and stuff like that. Or that it would open me up to more judgment from other people because I'd be more in the public eye or interacting with more people and worrying about that kind of thing. So I just did whatever fears of succeeding I had, and we all have some fear of succeeding. So dealing with that, and then also the fear of failure. What if I fail? Here's what's happened in the past when I've failed and the negative outcomes of that. What if I continue to fail? What if people notice me failing and judge me for that? That kind of thing. Fear of becoming poor. So I just kind of freaked out about the possibility of becoming poor and what that would look like and what that would do to me and all of that. And also included, my mom was on welfare when I was a young child and stuff. So there were some pieces of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then doing a click track round on people are tired of hearing me talk about my work. And that's a rejection of me because my identity is so wrapped up in my work. So just kind of processing that belief that I was forming. And this would work really well, I think, for people too who like do things like sell doTERRA or do MLMs and stuff. I'm sure they feel that extreme energy if people are tired of hearing them talk about their work. Yeah. And, so I had that too, to some extent, because, I especially went through a great period where I was just on Facebook all the time going, PS Tech it, PS Tech it. So I kind of was building my own perception that people were tired of hearing me say that. And
because nobody said to you, April, I don't want to hear about this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It was, and actually, in fact, people would reach out to me, go, oh my gosh, you've changed my life. This saved me. I was going to kill myself. Like, so, I mean, I have gotten people reaching out going, this has been a life changer.
So it's actually useful. Yeah.
Right.
But life is a story that we tell ourselves. And
Exactly. Yes. And then the failure of past events that I've hosted. So, I've found that when I try to host my own workshops, webinars, whatever, those tend to crash. So,
I've had that same experience.
But if I go to somebody else, like if I go to a yoga studio or something and they promote it, it works out great. But if I'm promoting it myself, yeah. So you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, and it's I don't have an explanation, but I chalk it up to wrong time, wrong place, and just kind of let it go.
Yeah. So, I did a round or two of the click track on the failure of past events that I've hosted, and going back to like when I was working on that, it automatically brought me back to feeling alone or rejected as a child. So times
Mm,
where people, left me out or whatever, and feeling that way as a child. And I was an only child too. So I kind
yeah,
of felt that way a lot, even when it
yeah.
wasn't related to,
It's interesting because I felt that way a lot as a child too, despite having a younger sister. Um, but as a grown up now, I actually like crave that aloneness. I
Mhm.
crave that, like,
Right.
one of my ideal job requirements in this search for a new income source is I still have to be able to work from home. I know myself, and I know that in the times that I have worked in an office have not made me feel good,
Right.
and thus they haven't gone well,
Yeah.
right? Like
I like
it,
that aloneness too. I mean, part of it is that my work is very wrapped up in having meaningful conversations with people
yeah,
all day.
yeah, and
And
it's tiring.
and then I go
Yeah.
home and my wife likes to talk too. She's a Gemini. And so, like
Oh
I
well,
get
so
home and
yes,
she's
she
talking
likes
and
to
talking
talk
and
for sure.
talking. So
Yeah.
I really treasure the time that I have that's just like me, just silent, maybe reading a book or zoning out to a TV show, or, even getting on Facebook
Whatever
or
it is.
something, and not having to
Yeah.
like actually be on. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. No, and I find that I need to be not on a lot. And part of that's because I'm a Scorpio, right? Like I'm an INFJ and I'm a Scorpio. So the two combined, and I'm like, you know what? My personal space is like 6 city blocks. So
Yeah.
please leave me alone. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bounce back and forth between INFJ and ENFJ. Like I'm kind of
Oh,
right on.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you're
So,
really an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I am like solidly INFJ. Like the I is like 70% or something really big. And I'm like, you know what? And I'm a Scorpio. So I'm going to act like I'm okay with you violating my personal space until I'm totally not. And then you're going to hear about it and really loudly, and you're going to wonder why I waited to tell you so long.
that stinger's going to come out.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Okay, so what else? Let me look at what else I have worked on. I'm kind of going off a list here. Fear of
Yeah.
not having anything to offer my clients.
Mm.
Fear of everything good being taken away, money, clients, security, the honeymoon phase of a relationship.
Ah, that's a big one for me right now. Yep.
Yeah. So, in there I would use like the history, the root stuff would be ancestral, and also like personal examples of times where things had been taken away when
That's
I
the
had
crazy
them.
thing. It's never gotten to that point. I've
Mm.
always got it back together before I've had to make any drastic sacrifices.
And that's a
Always.
big thing that I have had to convince my subconscious of, because consciously I know I have always been provided for. There has
Yes,
never been a
consciously, I
time.
totally know that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's never been a time where I have been down and out, had nothing, and was in this place of complete and total desperation, and
I
and
mean,
yet,
sometimes it's meant borrowing money from family or whatever, but it's never been like there wasn't a way to get past that hump
right,
and find it. Never.
right.
But in my head, subconsciously, that's where I'm living right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where, the ancestral stuff and the past life stuff can really come in to help you find some roots of that.
Okay.
And also, I find that a lot of times one of the roots of a lot of our issues is like as infants, we aren't always picked up, like when we're crying or whatever, like we don't necessarily always get picked up every single time. And that's not that it was bad parenting.
Especially
That's
like
what,
my sister's going to be 35 this year, and people that age, that was the age, that was like the era of let your child cry themselves to sleep. So
right.
those kids definitely didn't get picked up enough. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so, there could be this period of time in your life where, you were picked up pretty regularly. And then there comes a point where
It
maybe your
stops.
parents feel like, okay, I need to get a good night's sleep, so I'm going to let the kid cry it out for a while or whatever. And even if that only happens once or twice, it suddenly feels like something's been ripped out from under you.
Right.
So to that infant, there is something that's gone missing for you.
Right.
So
Right.
then there's,
Infant, you can't process it and say, no, this I understand.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trauma to that infant. And, I mean, no matter how good parents are, there's something they're going to do.
There's always something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because they're fallible people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, they're even under the idea of being a good parent, like sometimes you have to say no to your children, and
Right.
saying no to them when they're toddlers and stuff and they don't understand why, that's traumatic to them too. But if you don't
Yeah.
say no to them, they're going to be miserable adults.
That for sure. Yeah, they're going to be spoiled, rotten, miserable adults that nobody wants to be around. But also sometimes saying no is a way of keeping them safe.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
don't run out in the street. It's
So,
kind of an important no. Yeah.
we have to sometimes traumatize our children in order to keep them safe, healthy, happy, normal, functioning,
Exactly.
whatever.
Well-adjusted human
Yeah.
beings. Yes.
Yeah. So this isn't about blaming the parents. It's just
Right.
when you are an infant or a young child and your needs aren't being met, there's a trauma there. So
Right.
acknowledge that. Let that inner child have their moment of expressing how that felt at the time. And that will often show up in current triggers where you feel like your needs aren't being met or you're not being nurtured or taken care of or supported. So that's something to just briefly acknowledge on a logical level as a possible root of a lot of different things, especially around not feeling supported or nurtured.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Given my childhood, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
I always say, like, my parents did the best that they could with the emotional tools and whatever that they had, but they didn't have a lot. and
Right.
and they weren't neglectful or abusive in any sort of legal sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I never went without food or clothes. They didn't, beat me bloody or anything like that.
Right.
So they could have been worse, but they definitely weren't like super supportive or nurturing in my life either. It was sort of like they did what they had to do,
Mm-hmm.
and then just trusted that I would figure out the rest on my own.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So that can definitely be a root of a lot of different things. So kind of pay attention to that when you're root finding.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
And I also did a round on feeling powerless in childhood, because I kind of felt powerless to control the situation, the financial situation, the getting enough work, all of that. So that made me feel powerless because I didn't know how to fix it.
That makes sense, because I do, but I don't. Yeah.
And because of everything I just said about our childhood, we often feel powerless in childhood. Like, we don't get to decide.
Children kind of are powerless, so yeah.
We don't get to decide hardly anything for ourselves when we're children. So we feel powerless a lot, and it's very frustrating. So that coming up now can help us heal those childhood senses of being powerless as well at the same time. And it's funny because when I was working on that one, it actually came up I got like an intuitive epiphany of that I needed to revamp my marketing and services to cater to like my ideal clients, because I was trying to serve people like they were me, but really found out people needed more nurturing than I need when I'm doing my work. So
Yeah.
that actually like helped fix my entire business, because I finally realized that it was okay to suggest people have more than one session with me. Because before I was just like, here are these tools. They're amazing. Here's how to use them. Now go use them.
Go do your thing. Yeah.
Right. And, I felt like if I asked for more than that, it was taking advantage of them because I could do that.
To you, it seems very simple. Yeah.
But most people want, support and hand-holding and accountability and all of that kind of slow, steady results, instead of, feeling like I got to go do this right now and plug it into everything in my life. So
you and I are very like, let's just do it and get it done. And
right. Yep. And then also doing,
next thing.
What's that?
Move on. Next thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Next. I don't know how to, so I did a round on, I don't know how to succeed. there's too much unknown. I don't know how to word like my marketing. I don't know how to stick with something when it doesn't work the very first time. I don't know how to advertise and afford advertising. So for you, I think that can be, I don't know how to write a resume well. I don't know how to present myself in a way that gets them to want to hire me. I don't know
At
how,
the same time, I think it's okay to ask for help. Like,
sure.
I think owning that it's not a skill set is okay.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
I don't have fears. I don't have fears around writing a resume. I just know that the way that I do it is not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And could I do a bunch of research and figure it out? Yeah, I could. But you know what? I'd rather just get help from somebody who already knows, because
Yeah.
it's faster and it's done. And I have 3 jobs I'd like to apply to if I just had a resume.
Right.
So rather than adding more stress to my life, I'm going, hi, who knows how to help? Can I, thank you, help, good, perfect. Now I can apply for these jobs. Thank you, namaste. Like,
Yeah. Yep. Right.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also I did around on being afraid to ask for money. And that was, like when you're a kid, you're punished or yelled at or shamed for asking for money. And then it's also societally, especially if you do spiritual services and stuff like that.
I don't think you're supposed to ask for
People
money.
don't think you should charge money for that, which is ridiculous.
Right. Do you pay your doctor? Do you
Right.
pay your therapist?
Do you tithe at church? Like,
Right.
did people give midwives and shamans something in return for the work they used to do? I mean, it might have been a chicken or, whatever,
but it was currency for that culture.
Yeah, they were provided with housing. They were provided with food. Their needs were met. And now money is the way that we meet those needs. So
that we do that. Exactly.
Yeah. But unconsciously,
I cannot pay the electric bill with good feelings.
Right. Yes. But unconsciously, it can be really hard to ask for money because of our upbringings and because of societal programming about that and past experiences of being rejected of it. So, that was a good one to do. And then worrying whether people felt I was qualified or not. So those were the things that I click-tracked to help. And then I did some belief tools on it. I had the belief that I was a failure. It was impossible to make an abundant living doing what I love. If I made a lot of money, the government would take it all.
Well, they do take too much, but that's a whole other thing.
Absolutely. If I was a success, I wouldn't have any time for doing other things I enjoyed. I wasn't qualified to do the work I was doing. It wasn't okay to ask for money. I had the belief that my business kept failing. I had the belief that rejection was painful. So that was kind of a good one to do, because it's not only the fear that I'd be rejected, but that rejection was actually a painful thing. So kind of getting rid of that belief so that you'd be okay with rejection and not having to see it as necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
I had the belief that fear kept me motivated, which can be a good one with this kind of thing. Like you feel like you have to keep the fear or the intensity in order to keep you motivated toward looking for work, but you don't necessarily need that to keep you going. Like you logically know.
I feel like I kind of logically know I need this amount of money in order to continue my lifestyle.
Right.
I don't need to be afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It wasn't possible to support myself doing what I love. I had the belief that I wasn't good enough, which might be a good one for you to do. My business offerings didn't have enough value. People didn't want what I had to offer. I didn't know how to be rich.
I feel like I could handle being rich real well.
No matter how hard I tried, I could never succeed. I had the belief that it wasn't okay to make mistakes. I had to keep busy all the time in order to be successful. I had the belief that everyone would think my packages were too expensive. I had the belief that everyone would reject me. I had the belief that I was a failure. And remember when I did the click track on being poor? It's interesting because when I did that, it brought up like what I actually believed poor looked like. And it was kind of crazy. Like it was really disturbing what my subconscious had in mind with poor. So it what I would picture was like somebody with cold sores and missing teeth and like all kinds of stuff. And it was really weird. So I had the belief that being poor meant being scum. And I had the belief that being poor meant being unworthy.
Mm.
So those were really good ones to clear in general. And it was ridiculous because I wasn't in a place because I had, a spouse to support me if I needed something to fall back on. So
Yeah.
it was,
Unfortunately, I don't have that. And
yeah,
that's a big source of fear for me.
yeah.
And and yet at the same time, I don't want a life partner. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
actively looking for one. I
Right.
just want their money, which is
Yeah.
terrible, but
It's like, can I have some backup
can I
here?
just have a sugar daddy who never comes to talk to me and just gives me money? Yeah.
That'd be great.
Right?
Yeah, that's funny. Oh,
And I really don't even want their money. It's just in situations like this I do. Mostly I don't, though.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I also did everything good would be taken from me. I had the belief that, well, that one's kind of dumb. It wouldn't apply. It wasn't okay to have more than I needed. It was greedy to have more than I needed. I
Well,
always
that's
spent
why
my
you
money.
donate money.
What's that?
That's why you donate money.
Exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I always spent my money as soon as I got it. I would always just barely get by. I had the belief that I didn't know how to promote my book. So that was back to the not knowing how to do certain things. And like you
Yes.
said, you can always hire somebody else, which is great. But and then I just want to do,
when you like, for me, it's not everything you should hire someone else, because some things are literally just clearing your own belief. But
yeah,
we're not all skilled at every single thing
yeah, yeah,
either. And so just acknowledging, you know what, this just isn't a skill set that I have or want to have. And then, fine, have someone help you.
exactly. Right, right. And then as far as the positive tools go, I just want to go over like one statement that I did with the positive
Okay.
tools because it made a huge difference. Now,
Okay.
granted, I did not do this one until I had cleared all of this other stuff that I'm talking about that I just listed.
So
So,
a while.
so I had definitely cleared a lot of my own blocks to success and opening to abundance before I did this. However, it was extremely effective immediately. So I
Okay.
did a PS Tech Positive Quantum Turbo round, which is the new version of PS Tech Positive.
Okay.
I trust the universe to provide for us.
Oh, see, I've been saying that to myself anyways, but because I haven't cleared all this negative stuff,
Yeah.
it's not really taking effect. Yeah.
So since you have, because I think you have the PS Tech Level 1 set at home, you do have the positive tools. You don't have Quantum Turbo, but it's fine. You can use the regular PS Tech Positive to do, I trust the universe to provide for me.
Yeah. And I have been telling myself that anyway.
Yeah. So just program it, get it in the subconscious.
Yeah, it's going to get deeper. It can't just be here at the top of my brain.
Yeah.
And I do, and it's so funny because so my mom comes at her spiritual beliefs through Jesus, which doesn't work for me or make sense to me, but it works for her.
Sure.
And we've both arrived at a place where we can just respect that, and we just leave out any sort of terms like Jesus or Lord or anything that's somewhat offensive when we talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I do also know that she has an intense connection, and I've seen this in her since I was a child. When she prays for something, it fucking happens.
Yeah.
Because she's got this amazing trust and this amazing connection.
Well,
and she's got her stuff that she's working through too, like we all do, right?
Right. But that's what it takes. You've got to believe on a core level.
Exactly. And there are things where she doesn't, obviously, but when it comes to this, I asked her, I'm like, Mom, can you pray that I, find a job really soon and blah, blah, blah. Cause I was freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. And she emailed me and she said, I'm guided that I need to remind you that the universe knows what's happening. God knows what's happening. And this is preparing you for wherever the economy is going so that you will always be safe. And I was like, she's right. And I know logically that she's right, but how do I get this not just up here. I know you're right, Mom,
Yep.
but
Right.
you know,
Yeah. And so that's a great, and that's a fantastic statement that you've been
yeah,
using. You just want to make sure it gets all the way into the subconscious,
right, deeper,
and
yeah.
and that you are also removing anything that contradicts it.
Right, exactly,
So,
exactly.
making sure to clear any fears, any resistance to that, any, and
Right.
and working on any beliefs that are blocking
Yeah,
that
because
from coming in.
this is how it goes in my head. I say that mantra, and then the other side of my brain goes, "But what if it's not?" And I go,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, but the universe is always looking out for me. But what if it's not? But it is. But what if it's not?" Yeah.
Right. Yep. So that's where the click track comes in of that, but what if it's not piece?
Right, exactly.
Feel that
Exactly.
fear and that, all of your doubts and all of that, and that can help to kind of clear that as well.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that a couple of other things you can do. There are
Yeah.
some free tools from PS Tech called Embracing Change, because originally when you reached out to me, you talked about wanting
I
to,
have those too.
okay. So, you talked about wanting to control things, or, just being triggered when things don't turn out the way you want or expect them to, or come as quickly as you want, or
Right.
things like
Which
that.
right now is this whole money situation is triggering
Right.
all of that. But it's other situations too. Like
Yeah.
if people don't respond to emails in a timely manner or whatever, just lots of stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I find that the Embracing Change tracks really help people to let go of control issues.
Okay.
It's mainly meant to help you embrace whatever change comes into your life more easily, whether it's this big crazy shift that's happening on the planet, or whether it's like the little day-to-day changes and, things like job changes and stuff like that. Uh, being able to let go of those things more easily, being able to just kind of flow through life in general. So, what you can do with those is listen to fear of change. And then, if there's also a specific change you want to make, then you can also include make a change. But listen to them at night as you're falling asleep. So, just put them
Okay.
on super volume.
I feel like hold on. I just want to look and see. Oh no, so I've changed without fear and make a change. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So it's yeah, so it would be change without fear that you would be listening to for sure. And then if you
Okay.
also want to implement some changes and you've been resisting that,
That
then
would be
you
the
would
other one.
also
Okay.
include the other one and just play them back to back while you drift off to sleep, and let them kind of loop a couple of times and then just turn it off and sleep normally the rest of the night. Totally fine to
Okay.
fall asleep to them.
Just turn it
But
off when I wake up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I love listening to hypnotic suggestion as I'm drifting off to sleep. That's when you're most open. So that's a great time to do that.
I will say that I don't know how 100% effective it is for me personally.
Yeah.
And I say that only because, and maybe I was using it wrong, but I say that because when I was in fourth grade, I was really struggling to learn my multiplication tables.
Uh-huh.
Math is still not like a high scale on my skill set list.
Right.
I get through it, but it's not,
Yeah.
nobody's going to ever hire me to be an accountant, and that's okay. But I was really, really struggling to learn my multiplication tables. And so I forget who even said it, but somebody said, record yourself singing them and then play it back when you go to sleep. So me and my best friend all through childhood, Jackie, she and I sang very off key, all of the multiplication tables 1 through 12. And I listened to them every night going to bed for probably an entire school year. Let me just tell you, I still don't know my multiplication tables. I use a calculator because that's why they were invented. It's to help people like me. But
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
yeah, so I'm not sure how 100% effective it is listening to things as I'm going to sleep, but I will try it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I find is the more you listen, the better it works. But if you feel like you take things in better when you're awake and take it in, you could always just meditate to it and
Okay.
be kind of backing it up with a yes, I agree. Yes, thank you. Yes, please.
Okay.
Instead of
I can,
arguing with them, try to, accept it and allow it in and invite it instead of picking it apart, because that's often why I recommend doing it while you're sleeping, because then you're not sitting there going, well, this isn't true and that's not right. Where I don't have that yet, you can just be like, yes, please. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank
And
you. Yes, thank you. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
I will try. I think I will try that first because that feels to me like it will be more effective for me personally. Like
right.
the
Yeah.
going to sleep thing may work for a lot of people,
Yeah, it
but
does.
yeah,
Everybody's
I know
different.
for me personally, if it was going to work, I probably would know how to multiply like 8 times 9 right now, and I don't without a calculator.
Oh, well, and that's another belief you could do is I was bad at math. I had the belief I was bad at math.
I could, although that one, it doesn't really bother me that much because I can still do what I need to do.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
I find ways, and my high school math teacher and I are back in touch. Like I tracked him down last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I graduated high school in 1997. So, but he was still working there, and I tracked him down, and we now have some really good conversations about the goofy things I wind up doing because I have to try the math thing 2 or 3 times before I get it correct, and we laugh about it. So I'm okay with that.
All right. So, I think that we are complete with this. What I would like you to do is over the next couple of days, do
Yeah.
a few more rounds like we did together and just get really into it if you can. Have that tantrum inside,
The
swear about
parental
it.
screen. Yeah.
Really focus on how damn tired you are of having to
Really
worry about
freaking
money.
tired of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I really am. I'm so sick of it. Like, I'm going to be 40 in October. I'm done. Like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I should just be earning money and enjoying life, and I'm freaking done. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely over the next few days, do, maybe a couple of rounds a day
Okay.
where you work on that until you really literally cannot pull up an iota of feeling about it.
Okay. That might take more than a couple days, but
Yeah.
okay.
Just keep going until you got it.
Okay.
You'll still have the same opinion about it, but what we want to do is pull out the triggeredness about it so that you can
Yeah.
actually like move through and not have the desperation attached to
Right.
the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I still have to find work. I still need money,
Yes,
but I don't have to be terrified.
exactly. Yes, because being terrified does not help anything.
No, it really doesn't. It solves nothing, and people can sense it, and it gets you nowhere. So,
Yes, right. So we will check back in maybe a week or so
okay.
and get a little bit of feedback on how you're feeling. And if there's anything else we need to tweak, I can give you some guidance on that.
Okay.
But
Hopefully in a week I'll be able to say I have a job. Please, please, please,
yes, I
please,
hope
please,
so.
please, 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 please. Yeah.
And so it is.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you being on the show, and I look forward to hearing your update next week.
All right. Thank you, April.